What experiences have helped you prepare for the level of professionalism and leadership required of school board members?
Okay. I've served in a lot of leadership capacities in my professional career, from a department and service delivery manager with IBM over several of their accounts. Right now I am a lead at the Federal Reserve Bank, training several engineers that are underneath me. And outside of that, I am the chairman of a nonprofit based around youth sports and college prep for Kansas City, for Kansas City kids. I kind of chair the organization that has 6 sports underneath its belt, and so I manage everybody that I was placed as a president over each one of those teams, and then I also run our college prep as well. So to be able, the organization and leadership perspective that's needed on the board, as well as the ability to speak to different people from different backgrounds who want different things, is something that over my career, both professionally in terms of my own organization, has prepared me for.
Okay. What do you consider major challenges and priorities for the district, and how will you address?
One of our biggest challenges, to me, is kind of born out of our success. I have been fortunate to be a part of this exceptional city since 2005. I moved here. My children have only been a part of this district. I have 4 of them in the district. And I came here because of our record of success in terms of education. And so born out of that challenge is everyone else, and every parent should, wanting their kids to be a part of that. And so what we have found is a number, or kind of a fast rise in terms of attendance across our schools. I believe we're a little bit over 18,000 students in the district. I think in the next couple of years or so that should hit 20,000. It's probably going beyond. So part of what our challenge is how do we spread, I guess, population across our schools, from elementary to middle school to high school? How do we reduce overcrowding? How can we use our facilities in a way that would allow us to continue with the education process for all of our students? Can we use space in our schools that were not traditionally used for classrooms to become education bastions, if you will? Can we have split shifts in lunches to accommodate kind of the overcrowding that we're seeing in our schools? So those are some of the things that, if you look at what might be a challenge for us, those are some of those things.
Okay. What do you believe should be a primary focus of the school board, and why?
Our primary focus as a school board, we have one employee, that's the superintendent. And so our primary focus should be, one, to make sure the superintendent is held accountable for his decisions and for plans that are going to be put in place for the betterment of our young people. And that's both from a process perspective and from a financial perspective as well. Our responsibility is also to collaborate with the superintendent on the best plans to help our students. And oftentimes those best plans may not be those of one person, but we should make sure we're collaborating not just with the superintendent, but horizontally across the board as well, to make sure that everybody's ideas are taken into account, making sure that we're seeking to understand and then to be understood, and I think that'll help us out.
Okay. How does our district maintain and continue to improve its services and reputation?
The way that we do that is, in kind of the buzzword that we're hearing a lot is equity. And I think we have to make sure that we are teaching at the individual level. And so I have to make sure with the class that's in front of me that I'm teaching individually and not just expecting everybody to grasp a concept at a high level. And if it takes me teaching to the individual to make sure the individual is comprehending what is being taught, then that's what we have to do. So if we continue to do that, I think that'll make sure that, or that will ensure rather, that we are maintaining kind of our high level and our reputation that we have surrounding education.
Okay. The R7 district bylaws clearly define the relationship between the school board and the R7 staff. How do you, please describe how you envision your working relationship with staff?
Is that like staff as far as the superintendent, his leadership?
Well, I can't.
You can, yeah, okay, and I understand that. Our job, and I think I mentioned a little bit of this earlier, the board has one employee, and that's the superintendent. And then he manages his staff. I think from the board perspective, I'm pretty big on demarcation and definitions of duties. So from us as a board, we have to make sure that we are living inside of that defined border of who we are and our one employee, which is the superintendent, and that is making sure that from a rules perspective, from a bylaw perspective, that he or she is following that, and then making sure that the plans that we're putting in place are going to be beneficial for our students.
Okay. Please summarize your qualifications and level of financial expertise appropriate to govern a $300 million school district.
Okay. I don't know if anybody has a level of expertise to govern $300 million. If you do, I want to be your friend. But, I think from a leadership perspective and what I was, and I think our numbers are a lot smaller. What I had to do as a leader is making sure, and speaking of my own nonprofit, is the money that we have from a yearly basis, that I'm making sure that it's allocated to what is first the need, and then what is going to be best and beneficial for our district. And for me personally, for our program. Those needs or those decisions may not be my exact recommendation, but because I have a board that I sit and I work with, I make sure that I hear the voices of all those who I've elected and chosen to be on that board. You can only succeed through collaboration. I do not believe hardliners are ever successful because we don't have all the answers. So from a board perspective, and that financial commitment, we have to have the same manner. We have to be able to, again, seek to understand and to be understood. We have to be willing to listen to the ideals of others. We have to be willing to listen to the recommendations of others, and then come up with an ideal or come up with a proposal that's not my plan, not your plan, but it's our plan. And so, as mentioned before, my experience both kind of chairing my nonprofit, having to hear the needs of each individual person on the board and what they need in their individual group, and then having to have those conversations in a round and coming up with the best decision for everybody is some experience that I believe will be beneficial for me when I'm elected to the board.
Okay. What is your approach to conflict resolution among board members? And describe a time in which your mind was changed regarding an important issue.
Okay. You're probably going to hear kind of some of the same answers over and over because I think they're definitely tried and true, especially as it speaks to leadership. You cannot be successful simply hearing the sound of your own voice or your own ideals. It hasn't happened. Historically, through businesses, whether it's Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, they've always had another voice as there. Politically, at our national level, there's a cabinet for a reason. There are presidential advisors for a reason. And so we have to be willing to do just that, to hear something outside of our own voice, to put down kind of our own, whether it is we're beholden to a special interest group or whether we have something personal at stake. It doesn't matter. We have to be willing to say to ourselves what is going to be beneficial and best for the students in our district. And then we have to be mature enough to say, if that idea is something that is not my own, then I have to adopt it because it's going to be beneficial for our district, beneficial for our students, beneficial for our city. So we have to, that's the first thing. So we have to remove kind of pride and our personal agenda, and we have to open up our minds and our hearts and our ears to hear. And I believe if we do that, and when we do that, our exceptional district will become even better.
Okay. With respect to LSR-7, please explain your understanding of other community resources in Lee Summit and how we best leverage.
We have community resources. The one in particular that comes to mind is the Prodale group. They have kind of an after-school program that will allow a lot of students, and this is something that I've learned, not just through this district, but in my own nonprofit. A lot of students get in trouble after school when they go home. Parents may be at work. And so they're at home a lot of times with very little supervision. And so that's that kind of 3 to 5, 3 to 7 hours when a lot of students find themselves in trouble. So what Prodale does is allow students to come to that particular facility. Whether the kids get there or they have to come pick them up. There are educational resources there. They are allowed to stay off the street. And then until that time where they can go back home. And a lot of times it's when their parents is there. It would be ideal if we could work more with that group. I understand they're pretty small now. I've worked with Dr. Elaine. I've spoken with her. But if we can work more with her to be able to utilize that in terms of giving our children, you know, when school is out, a place where they can go. Additionally, because they help with homework, because they help with tutoring, what it can do is if some of those students are on the lower end of our achievement scale, that tutoring, that one-on-one is something that can be beneficial to helping to raise those that are on the lower end of the achievement scale.
Okay. Define equity as it applies to our school district.
Okay. To me, equity is providing education that is culturally relevant. To me, equity is giving the individual students the tools that they need to be successful, not just in the classroom, but in life. To me, equity in education is not, if you will, closing the achievement gap. I do not like that term. I think it kind of speaks to stopping the progress of one to help another group, and I'm against that. As a father of 4, I have children all across. I have 2 of them that are in the gifted program. I have 2 of them that work hard and they make decent grades. I got a kid who, if she makes a B, I'll say, "What's wrong with you?" And I have a kid, if she makes a B, I was like, "Great job." So, so to me, equity in education is making sure that the arc of achievement is bending upwards for everybody. Is to make sure that those who are already achieving, that we do our best to make sure that we're pushing them even further. So if they're in Summit Tech or any kind of technology classes, how can we get them co-op opportunities to make sure that what we're teaching them applies in the real world? How can we put them in a better advantage to succeed? For those who are on the lower end of the achievement scale, how can we empower teachers to be more creative, to have more latitude in terms of reaching students instead of either suspending or putting them in special education classes, and then allowing that teacher, once she reaches the student, to begin to spread that ideal across to all the other students or teachers to say, hey, this is what I found to be successful. That's equity in education for me.
In your opinion, what inequities, if any, exist within our school district?
The biggest inequity to me is our district is currently about 13% African American. I want to say about 12.5%, 12.8%, something in that range. But our African American teacher population is about 1.8. It's low. And so to me, the biggest inequity is that gap. And to be honest with you, I think that gap is inexcusable. After study has shown that representation is key, especially in the first levels of education, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade. It's shown that if you have somebody who resembles you, even at that level, your education after that has shown to be greater. You've achieved at a much higher rate. So to me, I think we have to find a way to narrow that gap. I think 13% student population and 1.8% teacher population is too big of a gap for us.
Okay. How would you address those inequities?
We have to find a way to recruit, and I'm not sure if that is already there. So there's probably a number of ways that I would look at that. One is we have to recruit, whether it is through HBCUs or other districts, to make sure we're finding good, qualified teachers to address that inequity. The other thing is to make the hiring and application process more visible, to kind of remove the veil, if you will. So to find out what's the process for submitting the application, how long does it normally take, can we reduce that time? The third thing is to make sure that at a school level that we don't necessarily have gatekeepers, if you will. So if Hawthorne Hills, and that's the school that my kids go to, if they need teachers, what's the process there? Are we looking more for teachers that have come through the Lee Summit School District and has gone to a college somewhere and now they are coming back here for an employment, or are we looking for the best fit for our kids? Visibility, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I think if we know from the recruiting process to the application process to the interview process to the hiring process, if there's more visibility there, I think that can help to address that inequity between African American teacher hirings and our student population.
Okay. Recent data provided by our school district shows that free and reduced lunch students are underperforming in math, science, and other categories.
Mm-hmm.
The data goes on to break down this group into ethnic subsets such as African American, Hispanic, Caucasian, and Asian. How do you interpret the data, and how do you propose the LSR-7 board address it?
Finances always play a part in a child's ability to do anything outside of their home. It does. I have, from my own nonprofit that I've worked with, from the kids that I have coached and I've trained, those who oftentimes come from a home where finances are a problem are often some of our more difficult children. And I think that is across the board, regardless of where you fall in subgroups. What I have found from a personal experience to be the best way to do that is more one-on-one with that kid. Oftentimes we have kids who maybe they're going to school, and sometimes the breakfast or the lunch that they eat at school is the food that they eat for the day. And that happens here in Lee Summit too. It happens here in Lee Summit too. And so we have children who I'm in school and I'm supposed to be learning, but I'm also thinking about what am I going to eat when I go home. I'm also thinking about how much time do I have to do this homework before it gets dark outside and I can't see because we don't have lights. Or in some cases, I can't bathe because we don't have water. Those situations exist. And for me, while I was unable to pay individuals bills, what I found out for myself in terms of coaching and for college prep is to make sure that we pay additional attention to those kids, to make sure that we're giving those kids more one-on-one instruction. That's from an athletic perspective, because that's what I did was coach. But I believe coaching is teaching as well. And I think we have to make sure that we are paying attention to some of those nonverbal clues that young people give us. Because they may not come to you and say, hey, I don't have anything to eat at home. They may not come to you and say, hey, our water is off. And so we have to make sure that we're paying attention to some of those nonverbal clues that kids have and try to determine, is this kid's behavior, is their lack of academic performance, is it because some cultural thing, is it because of some economic thing, and then we have to make adjustments to that.
Okay. Last question.
Already?
Already.
I'm just getting warmed up. So
what is your long-term vision for our district?
I think probably over the last few weeks, I've heard and seen both on television and the newspaper some things that put our city in a light that is not us. And they are some things that I categorically deny. I've said it before, I've said it again. Our city is exceptional. It is exceptional. And so with that being said, my long-term goal is to make sure that our district, our city, continues to be seen in a light that represents who we are. A very progressive, a very hardworking, a very demanding, and it should be, city and district that we are going to make sure that we continue to push very strict academic standards for our students, regardless of where they fall in subgroups, and that we have a responsibility to do that for our kids, and we're going to hold everybody, both at the administration level, those teachers and students, hold them accountable for that. So long term, I want our city and our district to be seen in a world-class state, and that we're fair to everybody who comes into our school, and that we're going to prepare every student to be successful both in school and post school here.
Okay. Bill, is there anything else you want to talk about, anything we didn't cover?
No, I will say this, and I said it before. Thank you all so much. This means a lot. Ron and I had a nice long conversation, and we kind of talked about some of these things before. But our city is, and I'll repeat it, our city is exceptional. And there's a lot of controversy in this world. We can Like, you could talk about Trump's wall, and somebody could have very valid points on one side, and somebody else could have valid points on the other side, and there can be controversy. But the achievement of our young people is not controversial. This is not. And it's not because a student is white or black or Hispanic or whatever, but it's because they are citizens of this great city. They are citizens of this great city and of this outstanding school district. And as such, we need to do everything that we can to make sure that everybody who steps in here is getting the best education possible. Because ultimately that helps us both in the city's, especially in the city's economy. We want good parents, good families continuing to move here. We want businesses continuing to do business with us because they recognize from every student, from the time they come in at Great Beginnings all the way to they graduate high school, that the Lee Summit School District puts forth every effort at an individual level to make sure every kid is succeeding. And that's it. And so whatever anybody's kind of agenda may be, let's make sure we focus it on that. That at the end of the day, because they're citizens of the city and members of our school district, we want to do what's best for them. And that's what I have.
All right.